And
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Dynasty Dudez Hangout with my friend Russell Clay and our special guest, Mr. Megatron himself, Marc Hava. How's it going tonight, fellas?
better than average. I mean, it literally snowed last night, but we got some nice weather today, so I'm pretty happy. Like my mood is up, the sun is out. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, Nathan's got that like 80-degree weather down there, so I don't really want to mention weather, but I'm doing well, and I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
and I have a quick Final Four thing. Mark's really happy about Wisconsin,
You
and
know it.
and I said before the season I just ripped them a new one. I said they were overrated and all this stuff, and they are awesome.
hmm
So
It's
I
Sam
forget.
Decker's
until they lose
world.
to Kentucky. But,
Oh my God, dude, Decker's been awesome the entire
hmm
time. Just a great leader. And
He's a beast.
there were a few Badger fans who were telling me I was wrong, and I forget who they were. But if you're listening, I see you.
all right, so we'll get into the NFL stuff. We haven't had a podcast in a couple weeks, but thankfully it was after the huge free agency boom, so not much has gone on. There was the big Charles Clay contract, which for me, when I'm looking at the Charles, it was like 10 years, 40 million, some massive overpay that the Bills made. But if anything, this does show that they're going to want to have him involved in offenses. So this kind of bumps him up maybe a little bit from a fringe dynasty, tight end 3 on your roster to maybe a guy you can rely on as your tight end 2. Any thoughts on Charles Clay to Buffalo?
A lot of these pieces, I don't necessarily like the fit, but they're assembling a talented crew. So like the way it looks right now, I don't necessarily like it, but I think they've definitely got more talent on that offense than they've had in years. So, while I don't think they fit together right now, I don't mind buying Clay if you can get him cheap right now, but I probably wouldn't invest much either.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they gave him 5 years, 38 million. I think it was kind of absurd. They gave him $20 million guaranteed money. I mean, I know, I understand he's a move tight end. He can catch, he can do this and that, but it's a run first offense. You're gonna have Watkins there, Percy, Robert Woods is gonna obviously take some touch. I don't know. I don't really. I think it was pretty silly to make him. I think he's now the fourth highest paid tight end in the league. Um, he broke 65 receiving yards like one time last season. Um, I think as in a real life football move, it was terrible. I think it was just not a good signing at all. Like they front loaded the contract like a lot too. That way it couldn't be matched. But I don't know. I mean, I guess for fantasy purposes, if you already have him, I think that he could be decent. I can see so many games where he just puts up donuts or 1-2 catch games. I just would not want to have to rely on him. And having as my tight end 1, maybe as a backup, I guess.
And it's guys like him and Marcel Reese who I always thought were sort of under the radar, like really good players, like real football players. But man, you can't help but think they overpaid for for him. Even though like I love his game, but yeah,
Right.
I agree.
Yeah, the Bills overpaying isn't exactly an anomaly the last 12 months. So,
Yeah, no doubt.
between the Watkins trade and Percy,
Yeah,
but
I don't know.
yeah,
With Clay, the problem also I think is just you have Rex. He's clearly a run first type of guy, and then you already have so many people stealing looks that I think it's just going to be really hard to rely on him.
yeah, I mean, pretty much it obviously, I mean, it's not like pretty much the main thing I took away from it was the Bills care a lot about Charles Clay, and
Yeah.
that's really the only thing that we can take out of it as dynasty owners is that they went out and paid for him, and I'm not saying I'm going to go out and pay for him, especially overpay or whatever, but it is a guy that will be getting some targets, or else they just made overpaid for no reason.
And they also love players that are all in like the first 10 yards of the field. Like they're just
Yep.
none of these guys are like deep ball players. They're all like in the same space. So this is another like not good thing for LaShawn McCoy. Like his receiving, I just don't see how he's going to get a lot of catches this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, either that or he and Clay get all the catches because EJ Manuel and whoever else can't throw. Oh, Matt Castle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, also, McCoy could actually have some, I think, some better value in non-PPR, whoever still
Yeah.
plays those types of leagues. But, um, I don't know. It's going to be tough to really rely on him. That being said, I know we'll get into a best ball strategy a little bit later, but I do like him for best ball purposes.
Where's
Yeah,
he going? Where's he going
he's
right
like,
now? What
what's that?
round?
I don't know. I saw like Mike Margosian. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's taking him like 12th, 13th round, which is that's not bad for MFL 10 purposes. And if you're in the best ball dynasty league, I think he's a good guy to have. But I think I'd probably be looking to sell him now before the reality sits in that he's just not getting that many looks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so another sort of under the radar move that happened this week. Jared Boykin, he was the guy who played the slot for the Packers 2 years ago. He was kind of phased out of the offense when he got hurt last year. Jared Boykin went to the Carolina Panthers. They were definitely aching for a second option or a third option after Olsen and Benjamin. What do we think of the fit here with Boykin manning the slot in Carolina?
You can take this one, Mark.
I mean, as Russ would say, with his, not giving a crap island, couldn't care less island.
I was just thinking this.
That's basically where I would kind of put him, man. He's got
Yeah.
4.7 speed. He's, even though he's still 25 years old, maybe he's not a terrible guy to have at the end of your roster, but I have a hard time seeing him do anything. He's just not a good football player, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, like he's a slightly below average NFL player, which is great. And
Yeah,
that's what I try to stress. It's not when I don't like someone in fantasy, it's not that I think they suck.
right.
It's just that I don't see the upside in their game that could sort of bring returns. So,
Right.
like, I don't know. What's the difference between him and Kotchery? What
Right.
Kotchery did last year. That's sort of what I see. I do think he'll stick on the roster, but other than that, I was actually thinking about quickly tossing him on as the second edition to Couldn't Care Less Island. But
Which we'll get to later. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't see him as like a huge like dynasty asset or whatever, but I definitely do see him, in a better situation than like the eighth option in Green Bay. So there is
yeah,
that.
no doubt, no doubt.
All right, so we talked about a lot about this with Scott Peak when he was on like a month or so ago about Victor Cruz, and both pretty much unanimous that none of us were fans. And there's rumors that he may not be ready for the start of 2015. So
Well, to be fair, I was a fan, and then after listening to him, I sort of started to fade him more. My initial thought was, okay, season-ending injury, his value's going to be down. Next year, he's going to have Beckham taking all the targets. But once he started talking about how tough it is to come back from the patellar, I've definitely changed my view. So, yeah.
And so coming back in general, and of course, even just coming back for the start of 2015. So
Yeah.
as far as like an MFL 10 type thing, this even bumps his value down more because, not only are we worried that he comes back okay, he might not even be back on time.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the type of injury where, you really have to take it seriously. Medicine and all that is, it's come a far, it's come a long way when it's come to like ACL, MCL type of injuries. But, everything I've read is basically saying he's going to lose his quickness, his agility. We all know Cruz isn't exactly the type of guy who can just like use his size to, get some red zone targets. He's going to need his quickness. He's losing it. They already have receivers, obviously Odell Beckham, and then you got Ruben Randall, Corey Washington, Dwayne Harris, Larry Donnell. I would be trying to sell Cruz at the first chance I get in all dynasty leagues. If you can get, it's going to be hard to sell him, obviously. But I think at the first, breaking news that says he's going to be ready or any good news, I think you got to take that and get rid of him because I could just see this as like a career type of ruiner. That's sad.
What do you think of him MFL 10 wise?
MFL 10 wise, I don't think I'm going to be touching him at all. I don't think it's really worth it because I don't know. I think he's just the type of player where, or rather, it's the type of situation where you're putting yourself at risk. Let's see, he has some sort of setback, in the middle of early in the season, and he ends up, not playing a lot at all. You really just can't take those types of risks, especially in MFL 10s. You need people who are going to contribute. It's just, I think it's really not like a low risk, high reward type of situation, even if it's a low pick. I think it's just it's high risk, low reward. I don't really see him, having a chance to have a good season.
All right, so we'll move on past Cruz. So it seems like every year there's the first week or so where everyone's going, and this year in particular was crazy with all the trades. But this is kind of like the second wave no, it hasn't even started yet. We're in the middle between the first wave of free agency, second wave. So the guys that are still out of market are guys like Michael Crabtree, Stephen Ridley, Ahmad Bradshaw, Denarius Moore, Hakeem Nicks, Jermaine Gresham. It's not the sexiest of lists in the world.
Certainly isn't.
But are there any of those guys that were targeting Dynasty predestination, or is there a guy that you think that would fit somewhere that is looking for an opening at their position?
It was so weird the other day. I was going through one of the waiver wires in my leagues, and I was going through, and all of a sudden I saw Hakeem Nicks, and I jumped up, I got excited, and then I was like, wait, I shouldn't about this at all. He's done, and I don't know. It's just such a weird thing because my brain still says oh, Hakeem Nicks, that's good, but it's he might be done. He really might be out of the league.
Yeah, I mean, and he's still. It's crazy. He's 27 years old, but
yeah.
He had a 1-year prove it type deal, and he did not prove it at all. He had averaging 10 yards per catch. But from that list, I don't know if I'm alone on this. I'm kind of a little excited about Denarius Moore. I mean, he's 26 years old. Obviously, he's not, he's got work ethic issues. He's been, healthy scratch a few times. But he's a really quick guy. And I don't know. He's the type of guy that I would definitely take a flyer on. Obviously, I'm not trading the house for him, but I think he could contribute.
That actually will be interesting where he goes because I don't think he really got a legit shot. He's always going to have the injury concerns, but how much can we take the playing on the Raiders seriously? So
Right.
It'll be interesting. What do you think, Nathan? You anybody on that list?
The two names from the list that I'm watching. Crabtree, I've never really been a Crabtree guy, and I think that his knees and ankles are pretty much gone. Somewhat like Nicks, but I think he still has from just because I respect Matt Harmon, and he said that reception perception or whatever was good for Michael Crabtree, and I was like, okay, well, maybe it's not terrible, I don't know. So I'll be interested to see where he goes. But the guy that I'll be I'm targeting currently, and will be targeting, especially if he gets in a good landing spot, is Stephen Ridley. I do think he's talented. He's another guy who's coming off an injury, so if he's able to return to the form of when he was one of the top, running. He was one of the top running backs for a little short period there. So I think that if he can bounce back, he's definitely a name to watch.
Yeah, and back to Crabtree and Nicks, I'm a big proponent of sort of just drafting for highly drafted players, but there's also a threshold where have they not broken out yet, or is this just how their career is gonna go? And once they sort of get into that 5th, 6th year of their career, and I mean, obviously Knicks broke out, and McFadden's the same thing. They had one good year, but the rest has just been a disaster. And once you get to that point, I sort of start to not buy it. So I don't know. Maybe Crabtree will surprise me, but I don't think I'm going to be touching him either.
Yeah, I mean, Crabtree is just someone who I'm just completely avoiding. from the drop passes to the attitude issues, tore his Achilles tendon.
Yeah.
I just don't really see him. Like they try to make him like a possession receiver in San Francisco, and he couldn't even really do that. I mean, I was never really a huge Crabtree guy. I thought he was obviously good, but once that injury happened, I figured it was the end for him. Bradshaw, on the other hand, I know he's Mr. Injury with his foot and leg and this and that, but I think he's a guy that could be worth taking a flyer on. I mean, he's shown that he can put up like RB1 numbers, albeit it was the Colts offense, but still, he's still someone that could be worth taking a chance on. So if he's around, if he's cheap, I'll probably go for him. But then again, I'm also a big fan of injured old guys.
Old and tough.
Yeah, no, it's sort of the knock on him has never been his play on the field. It's just keeping him on the field. Whenever his entire career, whenever he's been on the field, he's been awesome, and obviously especially last year. So if the Colts somehow bring him back and don't bring in another running back, that could work.
Yeah, so Mark, obviously a lot of people know you for the MFL 10 thing. We're going to discuss a little bit about that here. And with your strategy, with the diversification, you don't exactly really have specific targets or specific avoids. You're trying to get the value in each draft. But who are some of the guys you're buying based on how they're dropping or avoiding based on how they're rising?
And
Yeah.
1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Nathan, do you have your warheads?
Oh, I can go get them.
All right, go get him. While he's addressing that, I'm going to try to eat this whole bag of Sour Patch Kids.
That won't be distracting at all.
Within the next, so 5.
How many warheads?
I don't know. He has warhead jelly beans. Like, we wanted to do warheads, but like Mark could have told me if I had asked him, they're more of a niche sort of thing, so they weren't at my grocery store or a convenience store. So I went with Sour Patch Kids. So we'll make it a speed competition, and 5 minutes. All right, and
Whoever finishes them first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, how big's your bag? all right, yeah, okay.
I feel like those are not as intense as like the normal.
No, not
Those-
even.
Yeah, even just talking about the normal warheads makes like my mouth
Yeah.
tingle. It's like,
Well,
all right,
Like
Godspeed.
when you see the people do the challenges online, like people can't do more than 30, or else their tongue is just like bleeding.
Yeah,
So-
that's gonna happen. You're gonna have like all these like canker. It's gonna be like, that's just rough. It's torture.
So that probably won't happen to us, but all right, ready and
All right, so start with your answering.
go.
All right, yeah, I'll do my best. All right, for QBs, all right, QBs, I'm looking at Big Ben. I'm looking at Eli, Flacco, basically just avoiding most of those higher end. It's impossible to focus with you. Yeah, with MFL 10s, it's basically just sticking with the late round guys. You're taking whoever's falling, but that QB is a little bit pretty much easier because you just stock up on 2 decent guys or maybe 3 lower tier, and you should get some QB1 production. For running back, from some of the early rounders, I'm still huge on DeMarco. Even with Ryan Matthews and Sproles there, I still like him. He's going late first. Marshawn Lynch is pretty obvious. He was going second round at one point until because people weren't sure if he was going to retire or whatever was going to happen. But definitely buying him. I'm big on Forsett. He's going 4th round. I think for he just doesn't bring a lot of name value, so a lot of people just don't really feel comfortable taking him over some other guys. But I think he's a guy who could put up some solid RB2 production. And then some of the lower end flyers.
Hold on 1 second.
Yep.
I'm scared to death they draft a running back. I think that while it's one of 2 things. Forsett will either be a 4th round. He's not going to be a 4th round pick. If they draft a rookie, he can go down to the 8th round. if they don't draft a rookie, he might go all the way back up to like a late second or late third rounder.
Yeah.
Even if they draft a running back, if you're taking him in the fourth, I feel like he can still return some of that value. Because I don't think they're just going to push him aside either way. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think after the season he had, it's a type of situation where you can let a rookie running back ease in. I just think that he played so damn well last year that it's like hard to ignore. It's just he was just a beast, and it's like crazy because he was just so under the radar. But when it's not broke, don't fix it. I think they're going to stick with him, and he should put up some good numbers.
What's your opinion on Drew Brees and sort of the Saints offense? Do you think he's a good value?
No, I think Brees is someone who's going to carry a lot of name value. And, for all the sharks that there are in the NFL 10, there are a few people who are new to it and who are just kind of getting used to it, especially when you have like Evan Silva who's into him now. You're going to have a lot of people who are just starting off, and they're probably going to grab Brees when they see him falling. But I see no reason why Brees should be taken anywhere early at this point with Jimmy Graham gone. His numbers were down even with Jimmy, and now it's like they got rid of Kenny Stills. I think that passing offense is just going to be really, really tough. So I'm avoiding him completely, even though I bought early.
Uh-oh.
What do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty scared of Brees too. I think that I was trying to having the argument with myself. Was Jimmy Graham just hurt all year, or is Drew Brees done? And then when Jimmy Graham was traded, I was like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's like Brandon Cooks isn't going to carry an offense.
Right. And Colston's like 50 years old at this point.
Yeah.
Looking at Russell's face.
Hold on. Go.
One guy I'm really, really starting to target now is Frank Gore. I actually traded, I think it was Gore and Andre Johnson to Nathan last season for a first rounder.
Oh no, don't tell him.
Yeah, for a first rounder, which is completely unlike Nathan. But
Wait
I think
second.
Yeah, he traded for two old guys and he gave up.
I was going for a championship and it went awful. I got blown up in the first round.
But yeah, I think Gore could be like a legit RB1 this year. Like I honestly believe in that offense, the way that it's sounding like his role is heading, I think he's going to be putting up some really good numbers. So I'm trying to snag him. I think he's going to be like, the Fred Jackson type for this year, where he'll probably still go like 6th, 7th, round, maybe 8th round. I've seen him go much earlier lately, but he's someone that I'm definitely going to be targeting.
All right, back to Drew Brees. Okay. My sort of theory on quarterbacks is like they just randomly have bad years sometimes. Like we saw that with Rivers, we saw that with Manning, we saw that with Brady. Like 2 years ago, Brady, I'm looking at it now, he only threw 25 touchdowns. And that was a mess of a year,
Yeah.
And so while I don't think it's peak Brees anymore, he survived without Jimmy Graham before.
Right.
Like they had a good offense before. Do they necessarily have the firepower they used to? No. So I don't think he's necessarily a top 3 to 5 option anymore, but I do think he could be a value. Where's he going now? Like 7th round, something like that?
Nah, that's the thing. It's like he's still going a little like fifth round and like
oh wow,
it's going to be around like 6th round. Again, with recent ADP, it's hard to tell because my fantasy league doesn't have an option that you can filter like after this certain date until May. But I don't know. You got to imagine that Saints are probably going to be targeting a receiver in the draft, and if they happen to pick someone up, I think that his ADP will probably go back up. So it could be a chance to buy low now.
All right, so you did compare Frank Gore to this year's version of Fred Jackson. For me, I did a few NFL 10s, early in the offseason, and I was targeting Fred Jackson in like the 8th, 9th round, and now he's going like in the teens.
Yeah.
How worried should I be?
I don't think you should be too worried, but pretty worried considering where he was going. The thing is like I I just have like a hard time believing that the Bills are just going to be like, sorry, Fred, you're not getting the ball. Like they just like love him so much. Like Spiller was like in the peak of his like talent, and they're still like Fred Jackson's like out snapping him.
Yes,
Like
he was.
it would not surprise me if Fred Jackson somehow ends up with more fantasy points than LaShawn McCoy. It would not surprise me that much. Not likely,
Dude.
but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, if McCoy gets dinged for a few weeks and then Fred just takes the reins, like he's done it before.
Yeah.
And age doesn't matter for him anymore. It's like, we're just riding this one out. Like, who knows? He could be 40 and still playing at this point.
Yeah, there's just certain running backs where they get to that, that age of decline, and they just give it the middle finger and they just keep going.
Yeah.
All right, so you hit on some quarterbacks, running backs. What about wide receivers, tight ends that you're either avoiding or targeting?
So for wide receivers, some of the more obvious ones is like, Hopkins, Alshon. Now that Macklin's gone, I'm looking at Jordan Matthews. But some of the little later round picks that I'm really looking into, Mike Wallace is one of them. I think Teddy's going to be able to, get him a good deep ball. I think he'll be, a perfect best ball kind of guy. That's kind of fallen out of people's good graces after he's just like had so many, he puts a donut one game and then goes off the next game. But then just like to fire off a few others that are low, I'd say Anquan Bolden, he's going like 46th wide receiver. Andre Johnson, someone who's probably going to rise, but he was like bottom wide receiver 3 in ADP. And then last, I'm taking a gamble on Justin Blackmon this year, around the 50th receiver on the board.
Okay. That's one of the more interesting situations to watch, because who knows what direction they're going to go if Blackmon does come back, They could still believe, like, he's that player they picked with the number 5 pick, So.
Right. I mean, he was putting up, like, pretty ridiculous numbers at one point, and he's just the type of player where, 50th receiver off the board for a chance to have someone who's going to put up wide receiver 1 numbers, like, I just think that, that's the type of player that you're going to make sure that you want in your MFL 10s. Because if he happens to go off and you have a decent amount of shares of him, like, that's the type of, way you're going to come crazy profitable.
See, that's the thing, and I talked about this a lot with, and I'm going to, go against your point here. Back when Josh Gordon was sort of in limbo, and we were not sure if he was going to be, this was back in 2014, whether he was going to be a 10-game suspension, 16-game suspension. We were really unsure what it was going to be. I was not endorsing Josh Gordon as a pick, because I think that every roster part is so key in NFL 10s, and I think that you really just can't afford to have a player be suspended all year and then win it all. And, I mean, I could be wrong here. I'm sure there was some Justin Blackmon, Josh Gordon that did win NFL 10s last year. But I think you're putting yourself behind an 8 ball. Yes, I mean, he's a guy I'm okay with, like, once or twice if you're a high-volume player.
Right.
But it's not a guy that I'm going to be more than like a 10% invested in.
Yeah, I don't know. I think with Blackmon, I guess the main difference that I see is that, if reinstated, he could play legit, almost full season. And the thing is, I think Gordon at one point was going last year roughly like 8th, 9th round when we weren't really sure, where Blackman's falling a little bit farther towards like 10th, 11th round. And I definitely do agree with you that, you really need to make sure that you're not missing on, and you need to have players who are contributing. But wide receiver is the one position where, you're usually you're targeting 6, 7 guys. So if you feel comfortable with your 2 quarterbacks and your 2 tight ends and you have an extra spot, I think it's worth going for. But I have been avoiding him on teams where I didn't feel comfortable at QB and tight end, because those positions really do dictate what you're going to do at with those extra picks that you would have.
And I don't know about the research. This is sort of just something I picked up, but like at least in dynasties, that 7 to 12 round range is like there's tons of boom bust guys every year, both at running back and wide receiver. So if you can just hit and he would be a guy where he definitely has the ability, and we're pretty, we've seen it before, so it's not like we're guessing, I get the Josh Gordon comparison now.
Yeah, no, that's
But
definitely reasonable.
I do like Blackman a little bit this
The
year.
thing is, I'm just like pulling up real quick to see the receivers that are kind of going near him, and it looks like at the moment, or it's a little, Crabtree is going before him. Um, Kendall Wright is someone who like Kendall Wright is just he's just not going to give you those winning. He's going to be putting up like 4 or 5
Yeah.
receptions, whatever it is. He's just not the player you want for best ball. He's
He's
actually
bye-week protection in MFL defense, essentially.
what'd you
Right.
say?
I said he's essentially bye-week protection.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
but he's just not going to put up those numbers, and he's going around. Blackman's going around. Like John Brown. Like it's not bad, but because there are some people here that I guess looking at it that I definitely would prefer. There's like Anquan Bolden. There's Terrence Williams, Ruben Randall, Marquise Wilson. So I mean, those are guys that I definitely am targeting as well.
Well, this is sort of why, like, you don't just buy, like, you're not investing your whole, like, bankroll in him. It's just a
Right,
guy you prefer, you know? There's
right.
always going to be that range when you're drafting. So, like, obviously you like other guys there, but
Right,
yeah,
you got to spread it out.
yeah,
That's the portfolio.
yeah.
All right, so we'll talk some connections between MFL 10 and Dynasty. I know you play a lot of both, Mark. So how do you think playing both can help one another? Being a Dynasty player helping you in MFL 10s and vice versa?
By the way, this sucks and my tongue hurts, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I still got a quarter of a bag
It's
left.
like having one of those
We got
like
soybeans left.
those like what were those like candy balls that like you would spend like years licking just to like get to the middle?
Jawbreakers?
Yeah, jawbreakers. It's like that, and like after a while, it's like torture to your tongue,
Yeah, you keep going anyway.
and you're just like you. At one point, you're like crying and bleeding, and you're just like, I have to finish this. But yeah, all right. So getting back to the connections. So I think there's definitely a few ways that it will really help you both ways. One I'd say is it gives you a really good idea on what rookies could be year one impact players, and I think that's really important to know if you're a win now dynasty team or if you're rebuilding. And it's something that you really need to wait until the rookie draft to get a full grasp on that, because we all know that someone like, let's say, Carlos Hyde, if he landed on the Titans last year, that's much different than being on the 49ers as far as redraft goes. But it does. It gives you a really big, once a rookie draft happens, you'll know, who's going to be rookies that you can target. Maybe your team's getting a little older, you're in win now mode, but you want to start getting younger, and that's when you target someone like a Kelvin Benjamin type. The second thing I would say is it definitely gives you some insight as to the veterans that are going really high in redraft that you might be able to acquire cheaply in dynasty leagues. Someone who is a perfect example is like Frank Gore. You probably can get him for a very reasonable rookie pick, and he's someone that Nathan's getting a little smirk. But yeah, he really is. You could probably get him on the cheap, and he's someone that could really give you that little boost that pushed you over the edge.
And I mean, you look at a guy like Anquan Bolden,
Yep.
who this is one of the things I've sort of focused on the last few years. Probably only learned this within the last year or two, but like for Dynasty, you can have those stop gaps like Bolden. I mean, what did he have? 1,100 yards last year. Like you can totally survive in Dynasty with him as your wide receiver 3, and it's a good situation for you. Like he's a plus player as a wide receiver 3, and you could have gotten him last year for like nothing.
Yep.
And it might be the same thing again this year. So.
Yeah, I remember we had a bet, best ball dynasty startup that us three all did recently, the MFL 10 that never.
Oh my God, dude! You just took all the guys I wanted.
I think me and you had a very similar mindset with like Andre Johnson, Anquan Bolden, those type of like older receivers, and I remember I think it was like a couple years ago, like Reggie Wayne was like my guy. I had like 30% exposure to him, and it's just the type of player that you really want to just kind of have someone to fall back onto.
And obviously you don't want to rely on those guys, but if you can just like get one for cheap and they can sort of like help you out when you have a bunch of young guys, like that's a pretty good layering.
Right.
Yeah, no, I was just going to tell Mark that I'll sell Frank Gore back to him for a first.
Yeah, no. Unfortunately, for the first time in my dynasty life, I would say I am in rebuild mode, and it is something that I'm not used to. I'm still relatively new to dynasty leagues in general. I think this will be it'll be my third season coming up. So I was always going into those drafts with just like, oh my God, like I think my first dynasty startup, I took like Frank Gore like third round. This was like 2 years ago.
That's fine. I was all in on Roddy.
Yeah, like just like
Fourth round.
Larry Fitz, like just
Yeah.
players. I didn't realize that, like, you should be aiming younger. If you see my first startup with Nathan, it was just like, sorry, in our Seinfeld league. I'm looking back on it, it's just cringe.
That's everyone though. If
Yeah, you gotta
anyone
learn.
wants to claim that their first dynasty they were awesome, like okay, sure.
Yeah,
But like everyone else pretty much needs at least one or two to sort of get the feel for things, you know?
I mean, I drafted Derrick Rogers in like the 9th round of that. So
yeah.
obviously, going young has its faults too.
I mean, my only good pick was AJ Green, who I then traded for Julio, and then traded for Josh Gordon, and who got suspended. So it was like,
No.
yeah, one of those disaster moments.
It was a nice
And then,
moment.
yeah. So the last thing I could really say that really helps with MFL 10s and Dynasty and that correlation is it gives you some good insight as to when a team transactional move can really lead to like a breakout year. Someone like Carlos Hyde, Alshon Jeffrey, Jordan Matthews, like I think a lot of everyday redraft players, MFL 10 players, maybe they don't realize someone like Jordan. I know Alshon already broke out, but let's say Jordan Matthews, for example. Like they know he had a good year. Carlos Hyde, like they know that he has like some talent, but I think now that you realize how much opportunity some of these guys will have, you combine your knowledge from Dynasty, knowing that they have this potential to break out, along with the fact that there was a recent roster move on that team, and then you can just load up on them for some shares and really profit from it.
This is definitely a thing in DFS too, because I always profit a lot more early in the year than I do late in the year.
Yep.
And I think like those first 3 to 5 weeks, sort of, all the redraft players are like catching up,
Yep.
But by mid to late season, they've all grinded and figured out every little morsel of any dynasty
Yep.
at that point. But those first 3 to 5 weeks for you dynasty players out there, there's definitely a profit to be made. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah. Although it's kind of tough because with MFL 10s really early in the seasons, like we're talking like after the Super Bowl, there are just so many of these young guys that are so high in the ADP list because there's been so many off-season dynasty mocks. And my fantasy league just does an average draft player, and they combine all these dynasty mocks, and you just like you're looking at it and you're realizing that Sammy Watkins and like Mike Evans are like third on like the ADP list. So it's like it's hard to let these guys slip. Where it'll be much easier to snag these guys when it's like your actual redraft leagues later in August and whatnot.
Yeah, it's so crazy that like we always talk about this with the MFL ADP. It's just like you'd think something like that wouldn't affect it, but it really does.
It really does.
It's much harder to draft young players until August.
Yep, it really is, and it's unfortunate because you come into it like thinking you want to snag a guy here or wherever it is. But some people, when they draft, they probably just scroll like down like 10 players. They look at the ADP list, they scroll a little bit down, and they make a choice. Like I remember really early in the year, you had to scroll like all the way down to like find like Anquan Bolden, someone that like I was like targeting.
Yeah. All right. So what's the ruling on this? I finished.
Ugh.
I still got all the
I finished like 10 minutes ago, so
the remnant. Do I have to eat the sugar?
I think that's definitely a rule.
I think that's got to be a rule, right?
Yeah, it's like a bag of chips. Like you're not gonna leave the crumbs. You're not gonna leave the crumbs there. You're gonna pour it out.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Nathan, you want to do our
yeah.
RSO thing?
Okay, yeah. So we're gonna have a word from our sponsor real quick. Reality Sports Online is a powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. RSO features the revolutionary free agency auction room, which mimics NFL free agency, enabling fantasy owners to compete against each other to negotiate with and sign the NFL's top 10 single or multi-year contracts. An intuitive algorithm acts as the player's agent, automatically valuing offers using the same factor used in real life: the total amount, per year average salary, total guarantee, and contract length. In addition to its revolutionary free agency software, RSO's league manager has tons of other cool features, like in-season signs and cuts, multi-team up to 5, and future draft pick trades, franchise tag, injured reserve, automated contract and salary cap functionality, and much, much more. Test your general manager skills today by participating in a free mock free agency auction at realitysportsonline.com. And use the code DUDES10 to get a 10% off league entry fees. Once again, that's DUDES, D-U-D-E-Z, 10 to get 10% off league entry fees. All right, so we'll come out of that and give us your couldn't care less island for the week. Let's do a little drum roll here. Go ahead.
All right, we gotta start making some animations. I'll get in the lab here next week, and you'll see some like fireworks coming out of my head or something. Yeah. So this week on Couldn't Care Less Island, I am nominating Jason Hill, the now famous Saints tight end. I get that. What, he was efficient last year on his targets or something? Is that what everybody's picking up on?
Yeah, metrics coming out of college.
Oh, he did? So he had that too?
I think it's Josh Hill, by the way.
What'd I say?
I think you said Jason.
Oh, I did? No, I meant Josh Hill. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's why you couldn't care less.
Yeah, no, that's why it fits on the island. The island's all about being just lazy enough to get by. Yeah, I mean, he didn't get drafted. I don't know. It's his third year. I get that he was playing behind Jimmy Graham. I get that he's playing with Drew Brees now, but I don't see investing any real capital in him. I mean, what's your MFL 10 perspective? Because this is obviously with a dynasty sort of look at it.
Yeah,
what do you think of him this year?
Yeah, I mean, for MFL 10s, he's the type of guy that I will get just enough exposure to him that I won't get burned just in case he blows up. But
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. I'm not really the type. I'm not going to be targeting him, especially when you have some other tight ends who are going really late. Like, I don't know, you have like Witten 17th off the board, Larry Donnell's 21st, like Jason Morrow, it's like the 23rd tight end. So though I don't know, but like I said, just enough to make sure that I don't get burned just in case.
Yeah, like I see Witten and Amaro and like all those guys with having more. I mean, maybe I'm off here, but I just see them having more skill and more upside. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, pretty much for me, for Hill, Josh Hill, not Jason. He's like the
Although we can call him Jason Hill.
I think Jason's a good name.
he's the guy that.
Let's call him. He's official. I'm putting him on there as Jason Hill.
All right. So
Jason Hill was a former 49ers receiver.
So
I'm not
like
sure.
Tim Wright, the guy that
Yeah.
a lot of guys target as a tight end 3. I can see Josh Hill as that type of guy. But the problem is that if he starts going in like the 14th round, he's obviously not a third tight end.
Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of people are obviously just like thinking, all right, Jamie Graham's gone, Kenny Stills is gone, Josh Hill is going to be the guy. But, we do have to take into consideration that there really is not that many, receivers, just pass catchers in general on the Saints right now. Like, and especially with my favorite player of all time, Pierre Thomas, being gone. I think there is definitely a lot of receptions that are, obviously going to be missing, and he could end up being a decent value. I just have a feeling he's just going to get hyped so much that by the time, a few weeks from now, a month, when August drafts come around, I think he's just going to be, hyped up so much and he'll be overdrafted.
I think Pierre Thomas is an interesting dynasty case because
My
I
dude.
feel like his career, while he was really effective in New Orleans, it definitely wasn't good for his sort of like almost perceived value of how good he was. Because they gave him the reins like 1 year, like way
Yep.
back in like 2009, and he was dominant. And they just never gave him the reins again. So I think he'll go down as a player that was always undervalued in a real football sense because they just put him in that role, you know?
Yeah, I mean, Pierre Thomas, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say he was dominant. I think that's a little bit of a stretch.
Wait a second.
But
All right, maybe.
I trust me. I know everything there is to know about Pierre Thomas. I know his family. You know, we text every day. No, but he was just the type of guy. Like as far as consistency goes, he was very dominant. I think he put up like a crazy like at one point like he just didn't have under 8 PPR points like for like the entire season, and it was
Okay.
just the perfect type of guy to have as like your fourth, fifth running back. You know, he will be in my heart forever.
2008. 2008. The last the last 6 games, he had a touchdown every game, at least. Two,
He's
two
a
or
beast.
more in 3 of them.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I'm looking to offload players like Jeremy Hill for him at the moment.
I probably shouldn't be referring to 2008 in
I know, right?
but here I am.
Yeah, that's a lot farther away than we realized.
It really is. It doesn't
Yeah.
feel that long ago.
I was a sophomore in high school, so.
Wow.
But yeah, we'll get back on track sort of here. Let's just talk about so Best Ball Dynasty. I feel like it's kind of evolving a little bit. After I don't want to toot my own horn here, but after I wrote those articles at DLF, they started popping up all over the place, like those nasty 26 leagues. You can find them on Twitter. Everyone talking about those.
What are those nasty 26 leagues?
Just in time NFL.
Right.
I think he read my article and then just started commissioning as many $26 dynasty leagues that were best ball as he could. So there's already like 10. If you search on NFL, there's like 10
Right.
of
Yeah,
them
I've seen the hashtags.
I didn't know they were best ball. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
I'm all in on best ball dynasties, man. I just love it. It's just so much better.
Yeah,
I did my first one last year.
We'll start with Mark.
Yeah. Well, as far as you know, what's going to be happening for best ball and dynasty and all that. You know, I obviously read your article, and I think one really good part that you mentioned was for QBs, obviously stocking up on the late guys. And one thing you mentioned was 83 of the 192 QB1 finishes in 12-team leagues. They were produced by players who didn't finish the season as a QB1. I think that's a really, really telling statistic that you just need to stock up on some guys. It's not really important to reach and take whoever Rodgers, Luck. It's awesome to have them, but for this particular format, I don't think it really makes much sense to be reaching for guys like that. So yeah, I'll definitely just be focusing on trying to grab maybe one good guy, because I did take Russell Wilson in our league because I really like him in that format. But if you just take one decent guy and maybe put a couple lower tier guys with him, and I think you should be totally fine.
Yeah, that's the thing is with normal MFL 10s, we have 20 roster spots, and we kind of got to be greedy with those roster spots, so the third QB isn't always optimal. But when you have 20, 25, 30 roster spots, it's a lot easier to fit that third or fourth QB on there.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember I took Geno Smith even, and I was I traded up for Geno Smith, and that's something that I don't think I would ever do in my life. But it's just because it's why not? At the point where players were going, if he ends up being starting, he's got some huge pass catchers. Just
after you made that trade, did you go through your life and ask how you ended up here?
Yeah, I took a break from Twitter for
I actually have a regular MFL 10 question. What is your opinion on the defenses? I know there's a lot of debate on like, or I don't know if there is. Maybe it's just consensus that you pick three.
Yeah.
But I don't really understand what the benefits are.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty. I'd say it's becoming consensus at this point to take three,
Yeah.
especially now that they took kickers away. And before it was like optimal to take three kickers, or we thought it was optimal to take three kickers, three defenses. But so now they take kickers away, but they only decrease the roster spots from 22 to 20. So where you were using three kickers before, now you have two spots. So it makes sense. You basically have an extra spot, and if you're not taking three defenses, I think it's silly. Just because a lot of these. The way the scoring works, especially for defense, it's a lot based on like turnover. Like it's not really a lot points against. You don't really get a lot of points for that. You get it mostly from like defensive touchdowns and stuff.
Hmm.
And we all know how that can just vary from game to game. So I think it's really important to have three and just to make sure you're just giving yourself an opportunity to have a defense every week who's going to have either a good amount of fumble recoveries or interceptions, or obviously preferably something with a couple of defensive touchdowns.
Yeah, one more thing that I've kind of been thinking about with the defenses is that if I'm looking at two defenses and one of the two defenses has a really strong offense, I feel like a lot of times last year, especially with Green Bay in particular, teams with really strong offenses ended up getting a lot of turnovers because teams are down late in games and
Right.
they're making bad plays. Is that something that you kind of look at, or is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree, and especially, a lot of people would argue, all right, well, then they're also going to be giving up garbage time points, but, with this format, I don't have the scoring up immediately, but I know that points against is really not that big of a factor when it comes to scoring, and, you really do need to look at the scoring system for obviously all leagues,
Yeah.
and if points against isn't that really big of a factor and turnovers is, then I think having those high scoring offenses like you mentioned is really a good move to do.
I'll be honest, like early on, when I was playing fantasy football, like I didn't necessarily pay as much attention to like the scoring system and pretty much anything. I was pretty lazy to be honest. But like as you learn and like grow more and like play against tougher competition, like it becomes really important, like
Yep.
reading all the finer points of everything. So
hmm
yeah, that's definitely something I would stress.
Yeah, and one thing I definitely think it's important for Best Ball Dynasty, for wide receivers is basically what I'm going to be talking about, is that you can just stock up on so many of these late guys that just have, potential to just have a touchdown here or there. And I actually did a Best Ball Dynasty League for my first time last year. Ended up coming in second. I blew the first. It was a total points league, and I blew the lead going into the last week.
No,
Yeah,
that
it was
sucks.
unfortunate, but my receivers were I had a solid core of Julio and Emmanuel Sanders, which is obviously great. But
Tell me
then
you had Eddie Royal. Tell me you had
I did
Eddie Royal.
not,
Oh.
but I did have like Doug Baldwin, Kenny
Yeah.
Britt, Devin Hester, Chris Hogan at one point,
Oh.
Andre Holmes, and Chris Hogan like had a few weeks where he was decent.
Yeah.
And and with best ball is, I think I had like 11 receivers or something like that, and it's just like two good guys, and then the rest were just like, Jags, and it was just it worked.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, and so a lot of like the MFL 10 research, there's tons of it out there, lots of it on RotoViz, is showing that like in MFL 10s you want early round running back, and obviously in Dynasty it's a little harder to do if you're trying to build long term,
Right.
but you do need a good running backs. Like it's hard to survive off of a bunch of RB2 weeks. You're gonna want some RB1 weeks in there.
Yeah.
I have one more thing I wanted to get to.
hmm
I recently went through and watched Eric Ebron this past week, and
Tell
I
me
was
what you thought.
wondering I was wondering if I could get your takes on sort of Eric Ebron. I mean, Nathan, you can go first.
I mean,
As a dynasty asset and just like as a player.
I don't know. I'm not like the biggest fan in the world. When he was going like top 6 in rookie drafts, I thought that was a little bit of a stretch. I think that he and ASJ are pretty close if we're comparing last year's rookies. But I do think that he does have a place in that Lions offense. I think that they'll use him a lot more this year once he's able to, prove he's a decent blocker and whatnot. But that said, I think he's like between like 12 to 15 ranked, tight end guy, where it's like, I don't know, I'd rather have like a Greg Olsen who's dependable than have to worry about an Eric Ebron.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously, with Ebron, when I watched last year with the Lions, there were just so many times where he was just making he just had so many boneheaded plays where he was either just not focusing or maybe it was just like the jitters, but I think he was a lot more focused on like running after the catch, and he wasn't, and that led to a lot of drops because he's always like talking. There's a lot of quotes like, he feels like if he doesn't break at least one tackle, but that he was failing or something like that. And in my mind, I'm like, dude, you got to catch the ball first.
Yeah.
It's like I think he's got a lot of talent, but I definitely I'm not that high on him, to be honest. We all know tight ends can break out late, so I mean I am still holding out a little bit of hope. But I do think he had a lot of plays last year where they were just a little worrisome.
Yeah, I was sort of not blindly buying, but I liked sort of his pedigree, and I just liked a lot of things about him coming into this offseason. And one of the things I would suggest is definitely at least checking out a little bit of each player that you're sort of buying heavily, because I went and watched him this week, and it was so weird, like some of the plays, like you just don't see from NFL players. Like I had to watch some of the plays a few times because it was just like his hands would go up and it wouldn't be where the ball was coming. It was just really strange to me. I don't.
That's how I play football.
Yeah, no, that's how I would play too. But for a guy that was picked so highly, that was a little shocking to me. I think, like you said, it's definitely his rookie year. Like he's definitely had some jitters, but I definitely have Eifert in front of him now, and they were pretty even for me before. So I still like him. He's a little expensive, but I definitely think about him with caution from now on.
Yeah. For what it's worth, he's getting some really good off-season reviews. I mean, I don't know if it's just coach speak, but I know Caldwell says he expects a pretty significant rise. Our Lions website says they expect a much bigger impact. But I think he's the type of guy where he's like reminding me a little bit of like Ladarius Green, not in the talent-wise, but in the one where you're just like drafting for upside rather than just like looking at the player that he is.
Is Brandon Pettigrew still in Detroit?
Pettigrew is still there. He is he's actually a pretty good blocker, but yeah, he is a complete failure of a draft pick. Although we did get him for like a Roy, remember that Roy Williams trade to the Cowboys for like a first rounder, and that's who we took. So I mean, Roy Williams, or it's kind of a wash at that point.
Yeah, he's one of those guys where he's still on the roster and he's an NFL player, like he's a solid player, but definitely not what they wanted him to be.
No, that's unfortunately like a lot of the Lions draft picks, or they are good and they leave.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you mentioned Eifert, and like Eifert had Gresham sitting there, and now he's a free agent, yet to be signed. So that opens more. Like the thing is that so often we want the Ladarius Greens of the world to break out, but then Antonio Gates is still there. We want the Aaron Bruns to break out. The Brandon Pettigrew is still there. It's just a matter of the hole opening, and then opportunity plus talent equals points. Sometimes one of the two is missing.
Right. And I don't know if you saw today that some news came out that Gresham might re-sign with Cincinnati, and it might give him like a 1-year prove-it deal.
Prove what? That he sucks? Jesus.
That's
it's weird how similar those situations are. Yeah. Like I saw something the other day that those were the only two teams to pick tight ends in the first round in like the last 6 years. There was some weird thing that came out, and I was like, whoa, that is strange.
Yeah. Lions have been doing great, when it comes to defense. But yeah, the tight ends in the first rounder, does not look like those have worked out for just about anybody, except for like I think Gronk was way first.
No, I think Gronk was in the second, but
It was in the second. Okay.
yeah, no, but Tyler Eifert's going to prove everybody wrong, and he'll be Gronk.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. I know you love Eifert a lot, so for your sake, I hope that happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so I guess we'll wrap this up with some. I know you guys are both Badger fans, but any Final Four predictions?
I am a Badger football fan, not a Badger basketball fan.
Yeah, I learned that recently. I didn't realize that. But yeah, I think they're gonna give Kentucky a really good run, and I'm not just saying that. I think their whole squad is experienced. They got that revenge factor, and Kentucky's just so big and beastly down low that Wisconsin can win, but they're gonna have to hit a lot of threes, I think.
I think Wisconsin at this point is better than Notre Dame, and while I think Notre Dame pretty much played the best they could last night, and they still lost. Like they played amazing, and I mean at some point, the talent sort of took over at the end of the game. But I actually think Wisconsin, like Kaminsky and Decker, Decker has been so good, just
unreal,
unbelievable. Out of his mind,
yeah.
So I think if he can hit a few threes and sort of Nigel Hayes can hold it down and Kaminsky can hold it down, just like do well against the big guys, I actually think they have a pretty decent shot.
Yeah, I think the spread's like 6 points.
They move the ball really well, and that seems to be the only way you can really get to Kentucky. So they definitely have a shot.
We'll see.
We'll stop blabbering basketball on a Dynasty Football Hangout. So, Mark, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, after Sportable went down, which is an unfortunate thing, I'm a free agent right now, but I'm really not looking to get back into writing I don't know. At the moment, I think I'm just enjoying doing leagues, doing our dynasty leagues, chatting with people on Twitter and stuff. Because, at the end of the day, you don't want to feel like you're forcing yourself to just, write for the sake of writing. So for right now, you can just find me on Twitter at MegatronFF. I'm always happy to answer questions and whatnot, especially for MFL 10. But yeah, so you can always reach out for me there.
All right, where can we find you, Russell? If we want to do that, we probably don't though.
Yes, I think after 3 months they probably know where to find me. But yeah, FF Russell Clay is my Twitter handle. Always hanging around there, talking. Not talking golf. I haven't made the move into DFS golf yet. Although I'm an aspiring. I want to do it. I just don't think I will. And don't ask me about baseball because there's nothing there. Ask me about bowling before you ask me about baseball. But, yeah, you can find me at DLF. I'm a writer for them. I focus on college football, and that's that situation.
All right, and, of course, I'm Nathan Powell. You can find me on Twitter at NPowellFF. I'm a writer for DLF as well. You can find me writing whatever random crap pops into my head whenever I do. And thanks a lot for tuning in this afternoon, guys.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, fellas.
No doubt. All right, we'll see you guys later.